Hello, and welcome to the How I Tested That podcast. I'm your host, David J. Bland. I'm an author and advisor, and I'm fascinated with testing early-stage ideas. I've helped companies all around the world, and in this podcast, I connect with entrepreneurs and innovators who had the courage to test their ideas with real people in the market, with sometimes surprising results. Please join us as we explore the ups and downs of experimentation together. Today's guest is Aaron Slessinger, and he is a senior director at HP and leads the personal systems, displays, and docks planning team. He spent almost 3 decades at HP and is a hands-on leader who is motivated by customers, delivering amazing products, and building teams. Hey, welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Hey, David. So good to see you again. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah, I remember we first met several years ago, and you were doing all this amazing stuff at HP, and everyone talks about how testing is so easy with software. You do hardware and software together, and you've been there for over 25 years. And I just thought maybe you can give our listeners a little context about you and your background before we jump into a testing story.
Yeah, it seems like it's actually longer than I thought that we had actually worked together when you first came. So like I said, it's great to keep in touch with you, and it's great to continue to watch your success and everything that you're doing. Yeah, so like you said, I'm Aaron. I have been here almost 27 years, actually. So a little bit, but I like to tell everyone that I've done multiple things here. So it's not like I've just sat in one place for 27 years. But yeah, I think you're right. We skirt a fine line between a hardware and software piece. And the good thing about software is that you can change it quickly. The bad thing about hardware is that it's not as easy to change so quickly. So you have to really make a bet and then move forward with it. Yeah, I'm in the displays and docks group now. We have been working on, the display is not what it used to be. It's not just a panel on a stick. A little bit more involved now. So we've been trying to really solve a lot of pain points related to mostly desk setups, whether that's at home, at the office, the hot desk, right? The hot desk for us is really just more along the lines of like the everyday general use desk that multiple people will use at the office. Yeah, we've been pretty heads down. HP is known for hybrid work and solving pain points for hybrid work, and we're a very, very big part of that. So yeah, we've been doing some great things.
So that's fascinating. So you have this problem where you have a desk, but multiple people might be using it or switching out throughout the day. And this idea of we're not stationary as much anymore. We have standing desks and sitting desks and all these different workspaces now, especially beyond the pandemic. So how are you testing your way through that? Or how do you come up with an idea and think, well, is there something there for us to test about this? Just explain a little bit of your thought process behind that.
Sure. So, before the pandemic, there was this notion of a hot desk that was around. And I think it was seen more so from a company perspective as like, this is a way for us to re-landscape real estate and make the most efficient solution for the actual real estate itself. Great kind of thought logic, right? And then pandemic came along and we all went home. I'll come back to that in a second. And then afterwards, we were like, oh, well, hold on a second. Now we're going to come back to the office. And we think that might be the right thing to do, but we're really concerned about touch points. Who's touching? There's a health element to it that we necessarily didn't think about before. And then at the same time, when we all went home, and I'm sure you're the exact same way, like we've curated a setup that is perfect for us. I have a curved display. I have a very nice camera. I don't have a headset on right now because I don't like to wear it at home, right? And then, like all of a sudden, you called me and said, hey, Aaron, come back to the office and come work on this monitor that's 10 years old, this old keyboard that's clunky, et cetera. And I was like, I don't want to come back to work on that. I got something perfect at home. So we've been trying to, one, skirt the bounds of like, let's reintroduce the hot desk in a more meaningful way that is good for the end user, good for the IT decision maker, and at the same time really kind of makes people happy. At the end of the day, you have to want to kind of come work there and touch our stuff. So
that's amazing. So the pandemic changed this, and I agree. My setup now is a very particular setup at home. I have my mic and everything, and my lighting and doesn't reflect off my glasses and everything. And so this idea of coming back into a physical space, I can't bring all that with me. And so how do I navigate that? And you mentioned about the pandemic. What is it specifically you feel as if, like what kind of risky assumptions or things that have come up with this hot desking post-pandemic that you're trying to test your way through?
Yeah, just one kind of starter thing is before pandemic, we were asking users, what would you like? How could we make it better for you? But then when we went home, A lot of companies actually gave stipends, if you remember, right? There was an element of like, hey, you don't have the stuff at home, so we're going to give you some dollars. You can go buy those things. Blessing and a curse, actually, because blessing in the sense we all got something great. Curse because, like I said, we curated something that was perfect for us. So what we've been doing is we've been testing and trying to learn specifically what those setups at home look like, why they're more appealing, and how we could emulate that at the office. So my team and I, we do a lot of end user interviews. And back to our conversations from years ago, right? Like we sit and we talk to customers. Like big quant studies are great. Like, yeah, oh, people are interested in monitors. Perfect. I think we kind of know that, right? Productivity increased by 30% with the second monitor. Okay, get it. I always try to start these interviews with some level of, hey, I would like to see a picture of your setup. What is it that you're working with today? Because it's quite telling in a sense of like what they're doing, why they've set up the way they have. And then I always love like the little hacks, right? So my favorite hack, by the way, is everyone takes a monitor and they set it like on a ream of paper or a book. I'm like, well, why did you do that? Oh, well, we wanted it higher. Well, did you know that there's such thing as like a height adjust monitor? Oh, there is. And I think a lot of it's just education awareness anyway, right? But nonetheless, like they saw a problem and they kind of solved it for themselves. Part of our problem and what we're testing is more along the lines of like, yeah, how can we push technology further to solve the problem? But then there's also just, let's drive awareness to we've got simple features like that. So
yeah, in a previous episode, we were going through this model of, do people have the problem? Are they aware they have the problem? Are they actually seeking a solution to the problem? And it sounds as if stacking your monitor on a ream of paper or books, that's sort of their way to solve it, but it's probably not very good, not very stable. There are all kinds of issues with it, but they maybe don't know of other solutions, or they're not aware of things that could potentially solve that in a more elegant way.
Correct. So here lately, I'll tell you kind of one of the big tests, and we started with ourselves because, we have a pool of 60,000 users in this company. So we might as well take advantage of that. And though we're all product people and we work on product, sometimes it's hard to divorce yourself, but we have other functions that just don't create product and they don't know. We decided that we would go roll out Hot Desk as well. I would say for an IT company, we were a little short-sighted with this, honestly. We went out, we bought a bunch of equipment, and we rolled it out to sites. We chose particular sites. We didn't do everything at once. I don't want to make it meaningless or anything, but we hired what essentially is movers, facilities folks, right? And they moved everything out. They set it up to the best that they knew how. And we said, hey, users, go out and enjoy your new Hot Desk. And we got quite a bit of complaints because nothing worked. Things weren't set up correctly, et cetera. And it turns out that like these things are kind of hard. Setups are not, they shouldn't be overly hard, but they are kind of hard in the sense of like how many, even if I came to you, David, and I said, tell me what you know about USB-C connections and daisy chaining and connecting all your peripherals, you'd probably be like, I may have heard those words, like the actual implementation of them is not so easy. So we quickly learned from our end users and we listened to them about what their problems were. And then the ones that did have success, we really listened to them too as to how you wanted to curate things. So we kind of redid a relaunch, I guess you would say, or a redeployment. And we hired some IT engineers, or we consulted them because we've got them internal. And we said, like, what should we have done, et cetera. We built a playbook of how to go do this, right? So like if I come to you and say, hey, David, like if you've got 20,000 seats, here's a bit of a guide as to how you should go deploy those 20,000 seats. So we did that. We know enough about it. We keep continuing to get better, but we think we have a bit of a goodness there. We've actually taken that playbook and now we've given it to a lot of our sellers. So when they talk to our customers, they can go and say, hey, you're thinking about it. We have at least a foundation for you to start on. One customer we worked really close with, and we told them, hey, like, why don't you let us test our guide with you? And they said, hey, we'd love for you to do that. So it's on the round of about 30,000 users that they're going to deploy Desk for. They've cut back real estate. They've asked only 60% of their workforce to come back to the office. We told them, like, here's our guide. Tell us what you think, one, from an ITDM perspective. And what was interesting about that is it's kind of simple. Like, here's the product suggestion. Here's how the setup would happen. And then here's how we think you should roll it out. And it really gets interesting because not everyone's the same. Like this particular customer, they told us, like, well, we don't have dedicated IT at every site. And where we do, it's easy for us to go do this deployment. But where we don't, we'd have to try to end up getting someone to come and do the deployment, or then would that ever happen on time, all those things, right? So it gets kind of complicated even in the beginning. The success there is we kind of went a little bit further because we were looking at different setups as well. So we tested 4 different setups with their end users. We went in, we set up a nice dual display setup, HP, dual display, keyboard, mouse, nice poly headset, etc. And we set up dual display, a curved display, a gaming setup. And then we actually set up a docking setup as well with dock versus just standard USB-C monitor. And we asked each of those users if they kind of publicized it a little bit, and they invited everyone in, and but there were more than just 4, but there were multiple setups of the same thing. And we said, hey, users, sit at each of them for 30 minutes and tell us what you like and what you don't like. The beauty of that is there's a survey and there's some data and some results that came from it. The second beauty of it for me and my team specifically is we got to interview those end users as they were working, right? What do you like? Back to my hack around the bring the paper, right? What do you don't like? Which applications are you using? Why would you like this setup versus that setup? One example for them is this company's an insurance company. They use a lot of web-based apps. A lot of them did not like a curved display because they use multiple windows, and they really like the idea of having our dual display setup with dedicated windows that they didn't have to guess where things were, full screens and stuff like that, right? And normally, curve is a wow factor for most people, so they're all about it, right? Truly interesting in the sense that we got one level deeper. We didn't just talk about the hardware, but we talked about the software pieces and the actual use case as to why they chose what they did. And at the end of the day, super successful. This company ended up choosing one setup. There's one clear winner, which was dual display. At the same time, they decided this is what they were going to do. They decided this is what they would buy, and they're in the process of actually rolling out to their 30,000 seats today.
I think it's fascinating how you're testing your playbook with customers. It's not necessarily testing on, but testing with, and they know it's kind of a test, but at the same time, it's pretty open that, look, we want to learn with you so you have the best experience when it comes to hot desking. So I really love that approach and that's what I'm seeing more from B2B clients that I have. It's less of testing on, it's more about, hey, let's invite you in earlier in the process and let's co-create together so we have the optimal experience. I hope that continues to be a trend across the industry. And I was wondering, when you were talking about that, are there any steps before? Because with hardware, it seems as if, well, there's 3D printing, you could use maybe paper prototyping with cardboard and such. Do you do that sort of testing as well, where it's really low fidelity, before you have the IT setup and everything with the curved monitors and all that? Is there anything before that you're trying to do more like a quick, scrappy way? I was just wondering if there's anything like that you do.
Yeah. Just quickly, one other point I wanted to make was not only are we testing with them, but I think the feedback we get is actually beneficial, back to your point about hardware, for us in general. We only improve our products by good customer feedback, the end user or IT folks, and then we just have better products at the end of the day. So it's critical that we have that interaction and whatnot. This is a very kind of here's what we had, here's how we deploy a setup perspective. Your low fidelity testing, we started this with you actually all those years ago. And I remember when you gave us the list of material like cardboard and this and the other, I was I'm not exactly sure what exactly we're looking at, but okay. But I tell you, it's proof is the pudding, it works. Recently, we've been looking at, I'll give you another example of my curved display. One curve is not the same as another curve, right? There's a sense of more curve versus less curve, and then perception of curve and whatnot. So we've been looking at a very large curved display, and normally our panel makers and stuff will come to us and say, here's what we got. Is this what you want? And we like to go one step further and just confirm that will or will not work. So we've been testing curvature with quite a few end users. So we got out the cardboard and the X-Acto knife, and we actually started building what is a curved display, so to say, right? And we've had some folks come in and we have them sit in front of each one, and we have them tell us, and it doesn't really need to be a live video stream or anything. It's just more or less how does it fit on the desk? Are there any interruptions to the other devices that you have on your desk, right? Do you need to turn your head any more amount, or is it more uncomfortable for you to turn your head at this curvature versus another curvature, right? And if you get too curved, things kind of protrude onto the desk and kind of get in the way of moving your mouse or where you would put your notebook or something. And then if it's not curved enough, you feel like you're kind of looking off into the distance, so to say, right? So this low fidelity testing is super useful because it cuts out so much of the like high fidelity testing, I would say, and prototyping so that we can just narrow down to two things, or ultimately we can just make a decision quickly.
Yeah, I think when we say with software companies, we say paper prototyping. It's like, I'm going to draw, a workflow or everything. And I think there aren't as many stories about, we're literally just going to do cardboard and we're just going to bend things and get feedback. And that could potentially shape the final product, which I imagine it would be much more expensive to make a finished curve and then realize something was wrong versus catching it sooner. So I love that you bring people in. Are these mostly internal folks? Do you get external? Is it a mix?
We do both, actually. I think internal is good. The thing I don't like about internal is I feel like we're too smart, so to say, right? I'm sure you've read the book, The Mom Test and things like that, right? Like we're in it every day, so we know too much about it, right? I feel like we need everyday user that isn't in it as much, that would legitimately sit in front of it and then like make an ultimate decision or decide like quickly, I like this or I don't like this. That's the feedback that I feel like we really need. And this brings up a good point that I wanted to make if I didn't stress it earlier enough. I talked about the end user and the IT decision maker. And I feel like a lot of times with B2B conversations, the buyer is the IT decision maker. And a lot of times we tend to listen to them because they're the buyer. Yes. I think there's a shift in the industry right now where IT decision maker is really all about pleasing the end user now. And the end user is the one that has to use this stuff every day. And the more that we can get to the end user, and it's almost kind of that B2C type of approach, the better, because that's the true feedback that we get. Because I feel like IT decision maker is very much like internal. We know too much and they know too much as well. We're not getting that raw feedback from end user.
I like that. And your value prop might be slightly different to each, right? So the buyer, your value prop might be more about cost savings and things like that. Whereas your value prop to the end user is more about, well, this is comfortable for me. This fits into my workflow, and they're probably less, since they're not funding it, usually they're less price sensitive. And so it's a slightly different value prop there. So I could see where you'd want to go to the end user. And maybe you could even use that as leverage in the conversation with the decision maker and the IT.
One, I would say that most end users, I think, there's always outliers like anything, right? But most end users, I would say, they're really focused on like, how do I make this better for me? How do I become more productive in what I'm doing? Because I think most people are just like, the lack of efficiency really hurts them, right? Like if you struggle to sit down and get ready to work and can work, it's just bothersome for you, right? It's annoying. Most people just want to be productive, and technology should not be a hindrance. It should be a benefit to you, right? That's one thing. And then I think the other thing is related to just the tech and those types of things itself, is that people are very vocal. They like to tell you about stuff. And as long as you're open and you're truly customer or empathetic to their needs and the pain that they go through, it resonates very well with them, resonates with us. And I think that's a true part of it. Like we have to, one, be proud of what we build, but then two is it's very humbling to sit in front of someone that uses your stuff and take their feedback. And you have to be ready to do that.
I agree. I remember when we were collaborating, we tried to design experiences where we'd spend the morning, writing our interview scripts and talking about our riskiest assumptions and everything. And then we had people that we were interviewing around lunchtime. So that was a really short feedback loop. And what always fascinated me, and this isn't necessarily unique to your company, but people would fall in love with their idea by lunch. And then they get that feedback of, oh, maybe this isn't such a great idea already. So I think anything you could do, especially in hardware, to shorten that feedback loop seems like it would be beneficial to your overall design.
Your point about like falling in love by lunch and then talking with people. I recently took over a new team in Taiwan, actually, and they've not been exposed to as much customer interviews and things like that, right? The first thing I did was like, you got to get in front of people. You got to have these one-on-one conversations. And one is like the realization like, oh, I have to talk to some random stranger type of a thing, right? Which I think it's a big thing, actually. It's a blocker, so to say. But, once you do it, I think it's good because you start to really build those skills around like, yes, I can do this, the line of questioning that I'm supposed to be asking versus leading someone on and that type of thing. And then that's when the true magic comes, right? And we can really get some of those good pain points and user feedbacks that we can go solve. And those are the nuggets we really need.
Yeah. So I was thinking while you were talking about, so you mentioned the Mom Test, which is a great book that I also recommend to our listeners, and how you structure those interviews and everything. How are you taking what you've learned in those interviews and sorting through all that or trying to find insights? How are you finding that process, especially in hardware where you're trying to go fast, but there are also limitations with hardware that you maybe won't have with software?
That's a good one. I tell everyone, like, of the 100 interviews we do, we may get one little nugget. And I think that those are the important nuggets. We use all the data. One is we take the data and we try to at least validate what we think we knew or what we've done, or if it's still relevant, I would say, that type of thing, right? Because I feel like sometimes we always think that there has to be something new. And a lot of times you've got an end user or a B2C customer who is just experiencing something for the first time, and it's kind of ground zero for them. And we have to remember that, right? So there's an element of that piece of it. But then two is as technology evolves and as we return to the office, come back to new spaces, those types of things, like our experience with these devices change and our want from them change as well. And I think sometimes just hearing, like in the past, I remember we used to always talk about like the 30 minutes I have at my desk versus in the meeting room and in the next conference room and that type of thing. And I just need to be uber productive in the 30-minute gap that I have between meetings, right? Not so much as anymore. Like conversation around sitting at desk is really more like I want to be seen and heard appropriately on the meeting. I am the remote participant that's not in the conference room, and I don't feel like I have enough equity for the conversation because no one's looking at me physically, that type of thing, right? So we don't only look at the specifics, but there's a trend around like the before and after and what people are thinking, et cetera. There's also very much a generational understanding or perception of these things too, right? And I think it's good to talk with everyone as well. Like I always joke, one of my employees calls me an elder millennial. And I said, I don't think anyone wants to be called elder anything, by the way, FYI. Like the way that I perceive and want to be seen and show up and communicate is very different than like a Gen Z or someone that's older, that type of thing. So,
thank you for elaborating on that. I'm wondering, we have a lot of listeners that are different corporations, and recently we had Dave Masters from Realtor.com, who was like a case study in the Testing Business Ideas book. And I asked him, hey, for other people in big software companies, what kind of advice you would give them? You're working in hardware. There is software as well. And what kind of advice would you give to your fellow product people who want to work this way and other similar companies? Like, what kind of advice would you give them to help them start to see this process sort of have an impact?
Sure. I think there's two things. One is you just have to like remove the barriers and talk to people, because in my case, as an example, like a monitor is not a new thing. It's been around for a long time, and it's a blessing and a curse because there's a perception around it, but there's also an element of like, I saw something new. I want to do something different with it. I want to multi-purpose with it, et cetera. So you just have to talk to people and listen to what they say. And I think that's the key important piece is listen. Be empathetic. Let them tell you your pain points and stuff. I will say though, and for me, it's not software platform, I would say, but it's more like software enabling type of things, right? And I'll give you an example. We lead the industry in conferencing monitors. Those things don't just happen without software, right? There's an element of like, I have to have things as like the focus that's on the webcam or the way that the webcam interacts with different operating systems and things like this, right? So I think even for just standard hardware folks, right, there's an element of the, whatever you call it, enabling software, software layer, software application, whatever it is, however you describe it. There's an element of like this beauty in the marriage between those two to really deliver the best customer experience. And that's what we want to do at the end of the day. We want to build great products that people want to buy, but ultimately like day after day, when they sit in front of it, we want them to be happy with the experiences that they have.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is try to remove the barriers, because doing this in a customer-free zone is pretty challenging. There's no loop out to the customer and back or the user, and therefore anything that they can do to help remove those barriers sounds like it would enable working this way.
100%, yeah.
Great. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for spending time with us and going through how you're thinking about testing at HP. I'm just curious, like, how would people reach out to you? How would they find you? Kind of what you're working on. people that listen to this episode and want to reach out, where would they go to find you?
For sure. I think the other thing, I'm a little bit of a LinkedIn junkie. So please, by all means, go search me out on LinkedIn. I am very big proponent of HP. So there's a lot of HP posts out there, but happy to connect with anyone and share my story, advice, those types of things. Probably the best way to get a hold of me.
All right. So there you have it. You can reach out to a true product guy who's been at HP for over 27 years, has a lot of great experience about testing and hardware and software. So definitely take him up on his offer. Thank you for hanging out with us today and sharing some stories. I really appreciate it.
It's great to talk with you again, David. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to another episode of How I Tested That, where we share stories about experimentation, tips, and tricks. If you learned something new, please recommend us to a friend or colleague. And remember, keep testing your ideas.